So I came back from my fourth trip to Norway, and this time I attended the Oslo Street Photography Festival, which was such a blast. It was 2.5 days of inspiring talks, opportunities to connect with other like-minded people who were passionate about street photography, and I made a lot of new friends along the way. And today I want to talk about what my experience was and why I would recommend it. So I'm based in Canada. There are no direct flights from any Canadian city to Oslo. I had been awake for about 30 hours because I had worked the day that I was flying out, and then I had an overnight flight where I don't sleep well on flights at all. It's really important that once you land at your destination, you have at least a day or two to kind of adjust before you jump into festival activities. The next day was the first day of the Street Photography Festival, but it didn't start until the evening, so it was really good for me to just take it easy, walk around Oslo. I took the time to visit the National Museum, which opened, I believe, a couple years ago after some extensive renovations, and I got to see the very famous Scream painting by Edward Munch. So the Street Photography Festival started in the evening on the Friday and then continued on into Saturday all day. There were breaks in between, and the breaks were significant, about an hour each, and there was a longer break in between for lunch, and it was probably like 2 or 3 hours. And Saturday happened to be very sunny, so it was like prime time to take photos on the streets of Oslo. One of the great things about this street photography festival is that it was organized around balancing both talks and moments to connect with other photographers and taking pictures. Of course, every activity in these street photography festivals are optional. You don't have to attend all of the talks, you don't have to attend after party or even the photo walk, but that's the whole point of this festival, is to get the most out of it by attending everything. I think what I appreciated about this festival is that none of the talks were recorded or streamed. I think it's really important to attend these festivals and be present. I would probably go above and beyond and say that the moments in between the festival were actually my favorite because I got to connect with so many different people. I talk a lot about connection on this channel, and I talk a lot about adult friendships because as you get older, they're a lot harder to make. While there could be a very simple and straightforward way of making connections, sometimes events like these street photography festivals help cultivate that. What I really enjoyed about the talks is that they were very diverse. Not just diverse in photographers, but diverse in approaches, diverse in the types of output. I found that the common advice was to play a role. When you tell yourself that you're playing the role of a photographer, you give yourself a name, a label, a title, you can get into formation and literally play the role of street photographer. And somehow that mindset shift helps in a way if you are really scared or really anxious about taking photos of strangers on the streets. One thing I will say is that photographers can be very good at what they do, but they may not be very good at how they talk about what they do. And I'm not saying any of the speakers were not good, but to sort of manage your expectations when you attend one of these. For some of the speakers, it could be their very first time public speaking, and for some of them, they could be very seasoned and they come off very charismatic and confident. What you need to keep in mind is that these are photographers that are trying their best, and if you're expecting to be entertained all the time, this is not for you. As an attendee, to get the most out of it, you have to be really good at listening and picking out the advice that would apply to you and discard the rest. As I mentioned, the moments in between were my favorite parts of this festival. It was engaging and connecting with different people from all across Europe, and I might have been the only one that came from North America, definitely the only one from Canada. What I found is that the attendees really talked about photography and very little about gear. Of course, it's natural to talk about gear. It's very natural to talk about what you're shooting with. But more than anything, I found that people were actually quite inquisitive about each other's journeys and attitudes and approaches, which was really refreshing because a lot of photography meetups I go to tend to be about the cameras and the gear. And I really like that people take a lot more thought and care into the making of the images and the thought processes and the philosophy behind it. So I would say that this festival really attracted a lot of really thoughtful people. And that's really assuring because I want to attend more of these. And the final thing is that the festival also had a mobile photo booth, but it was just Mikael walking around with his camera and flash and taking pictures for everybody and printing them out and putting them on a bulletin board for anyone to take home. The concept of it was genius because Mikael was using his camera like a street photographer at the venue and taking photos of everybody because most photographers wouldn't take photos of themselves. So it was really fun to have him walk around and do that and then just print the photos out. And I don't know what happened to the rest of the photos that didn't get taken home. I'm sure they made it into some kind of zine or collage or art installation. And even though the festival isn't so much about taking photos, there was a photo walk at the end of the festival on the Sunday. And if you're curious about what gear I brought with me, well, I brought with me the Sony a7C II, of course. I brought with me the Rokinon 35mm f2.8, and I have a cheap black mist filter on it, as well as the Viltrox 28mm f4.5, which has a built-in lens cap. I really love that. So these two weigh basically nothing, and they are so small. And I really enjoyed shooting with these because, first of all, they weigh nothing, so you definitely bring your camera out and you have no excuses, but they're my favorite focal lengths, and I'm probably going to talk at length about them in another video, but 28 and 35 are all you need for street, and I am so glad that I have fully embraced it. All in all, I would say this photography festival was very special to me. They are doing their darndest. They really care about the street photography collective, and they really care that people have a good time. Although there were some hiccups that any event would encounter, they ran a really good festival, and I enjoyed myself so much. I hope if you are wondering about Norway or Oslo or want to attend a street photography festival or all three of those things, I highly recommend attending. And they're planning to host their next festival next year in May. So I hope you give them a follow on Instagram and maybe sign up for their newsletter or whatever it is that helps them tell you when tickets go on sale. So that is all I have to say for today. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Mm.